Welcome back to Hardball. Senator John McCain said Iraq is improving earlier this week after walking through a Baghdad market under heavy guard. But Iraqi merchants disputed his assessment and said they fear for their lives. What's really going on in Iraq? A great question. Bing West is the national correspondent for the Atlantic magazine. He says a second civil war is brewing over there. Right, in fact, it's taking place right now in Anbar province. You're looking at it right now. Different from the one in Baghdad. He leaves tomorrow for his 13th trip to Iraq since the war began. Bing, thank you for joining us. Let me ask you, when you think of the war in Iraq, tell us what it looks like in your mind. Who's fighting with who and where?
Well, there are two different wars, Chris. The war in Baghdad is between the Shiite militia and the Sunni insurgents, and that's the war that's getting all the attention. But the real heartland of the insurgency, of the Sunni terrorists, is out in Anbar to the west, and that's an area about the size of Utah. And out there, it's the Sunni tribes that are fighting al-Qaeda in Iraq that are the extremists out there. So that's an entirely different war. There are two wars going on in Iraq.
What do the Sunni tribesmen want? What's their ambition in this war?
Well, the Sunni tribesmen at first were just trying to stay out of it and said, fine, if the insurgents want to fight, that's fine. But then gradually, al-Qaeda became more and more powerful, began to take a larger cut of all the economics. They were hijacking people, they were stopping trucks, they were diverting fuel to Jordan and getting more money. Then when the sheiks began to say something, they simply popped them, they killed them. So at some particular point over the last year or two, they just went too far with these tribes.
God, it sounds like the bad old IRA to me.
More than one. There are about 25 of them.
Yeah.
And the tribes, and they basically said, we're going to fight back.
Yeah.
So now the al-Qaeda terrorists have to take on these tribes, and that's going to be tough for them.
Well, how do we play a role in this? Americans, we've got 150,000 troops over there, more or less, with this surge, or after it even. And can we settle that fight between al-Qaeda and the Sunni tribesmen you describe in Anbar?
Absolutely.
Can we win that fight for ourselves by pacifying that war, or not?
Absolutely not. The only way that war is going to be won out there is when the tribes take control city by city and town by town, very much like the Old West with Tombstone, when you get the tough gunslinger who can finally become the sheriff. That's what's going to happen out in Anbar, and it's not going to be the Americans. The Marines are very glad that they can begin to stand back and let the tribes and let the Iraqi soldiers take the fight. So the Marines like this development that the tribes have turned against al-Qaeda in Iraq.
Are the forces that we've trained over there rugged enough, tough enough, ruthless enough to do the job?
Oh, if you look at what the tribes are doing out in Anbar, the ruthless part is beginning to emerge when the al-Qaeda in Iraq has to use chlorine bombs against them. I'll tell you how it is, Chris. At the battalion, the Iraqi battalion level, the small level where you're down to 400 or 300 Iraqi soldiers, they are performing better and better. The problem is linking it all the way back to the ministries. The real problem is the entire institution and bureaucracy for getting the logistics, etc. Is the fighting spirit there? I think you're seeing that emerging more and more. Is the underpinning of having an institution there? Not yet. That's going to take a lot longer.
So what's to stop that government from being undermined 5 minutes after we leave there, no matter what year it is? We leave in 09, we leave in 012 or 2012. Whenever we leave, the day after we leave, what's to stop a military coup?
Oh, well, what would be wrong with a military coup if it's the right military guys who pull the coup?
No, you have. Well, you're a very practical American, aren't you? So you don't buy all this, we're out there to spread democracy, are you?
I want to see enough stability, and I want to see the terrorists beaten. That's the number one goal, and then some stability in Iraq. And you're beginning to see with these Sunni tribes that they've had it with being pushed around by al-Qaeda in Iraq, and I think that's very positive. And General Petraeus has promised that he's going to come back this summer and report to the White House and to Congress. And I think Petraeus is a pretty straight guy. I think this summer we'll have a pretty good idea how things are going.
Who are the outsiders in al-Qaeda? I always try to ask who our enemy over there. We're fighting the Sunni insurgents, fighting the Shia militia. We're fighting on the side, perhaps implicitly, of those tribesmen on the Sunni side. But who are these outside al-Qaeda types? Who are they? Where did they come from?
First, there aren't that many of them. There are probably only about 5% of al-Qaeda in Iraq are really outsiders. They're coming across the border from Syria, and they come across at a rate of about 30 to 60 a month. So if Mrs. Pelosi wanted to help things over there, she should have put this right in the lap of the Syrians and said, knock it off. But
I agree with you. Let me ask you this question. It's the
Sure.
last question. The President says, and his people say, and the Republicans generally say, and the Democratic hawks say, if we don't fight them there, they'll come and get us here. Who's M, apostrophe EM? Who are these M who are going to come and get us here if we get out of Iraq?
I got to tell
From
you,
Iraq.
Chris, I've been out with 30 battalions, and I've watched these terrorists. If they could hit us, would they hit us? No doubt in my mind.
But are they coming here? Are they interested in America once we leave Iraq? Or are they just interested in reclaiming their own piece of the action over there? Is that what they want?
Oh, I think they have a degree of hatred that far exceeds what we're able to grasp. I saw Zarqawi take over Fallujah in July of 2004, and if those extremists could take over another city, I have no doubt in my mind they'd spend nights trying to figure out how can we hit America or how can we hit Europe. I mean, they're real haters. They're real haters.
But they're not Iraqis. Though. What are they?
Well, some of them would be. It's this
Zarqawi came out of the Palestinian refugee camp.
Correct, and correct, and right now it's an Egyptian who's in charge of al-Qaeda in Iraq. So they'll migrate wherever they can find a home ground. But I don't think the Congress or the President is going to give them a city anywhere in Iraq at any time from which to operate. I think that'd be very foolish to do that.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben West.
Thank
you
you.
sound like the voice of knowledge.